Hello everybody, I'm here with Hardus and Leepo, two of our amazing AWS engineers here at BlueSky. Lee, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Rassie. So, as Rassie has said, I am a principal engineer alongside Hardus. I have the pleasure of working with Hardus. And what we do is we solution. We are the solution engineering team at BlueSky. So, effectively, we are tasked with the difficult problems that clients can present for us across all kinds of industries. And we leverage the breaking new technologies, modern technologies, with the best form of architectures and deliver the best form of value for clients. And that's what I'm part of as a team and what we're responsible for.
Amazing.
Yeah, like Lee says, we are in the principal engineering space, and there's nothing as exciting for me as walking into a client's boardroom and hearing a problem for the very first time. It's always nice to have the gears flowing and figuring out how we stay on that sharp edge of tech, making sure we deliver the best for them.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have you guys here. Gonna maybe just ask you a few questions.
Cool.
As your
nice.
customer for tonight.
Of course.
So let's maybe get started.
Mm.
From your perspective, how does AWS and BlueSky empower businesses to innovate and scale faster than the traditional solutions out there?
So, at BlueSky, we are a digital transformation design-led company that was born in the cloud. So that's important because it means that we are not beholden to old ways of working. We can naturally go into working with the cloud. And as a result, we have chosen to partner with a powerful hyperscaler such as AWS. And the reason why we have done that is because we are so obsessed with our clients, we want to offer them the best. We want to make sure that they have available to them the best cutting edge modern technologies that allows them to scale at a rate that they traditionally could not. So when we look at these things, we're looking at their costs. When we're using hyperscalers, they're generally a fraction of that. We're looking at how do they deal with their clients? How do they gain more insight into their clients? How do they operate even more efficiently? And that's how we think about scale when we look at clients. Hence why we need to partner with hyperscalers such as AWS.
Thank you so much, Lee. Hardus, a question for you. Talking about enterprise customers, we're seeing our enterprise customers not just innovate on the product front, but the way in which they engage with customers. Customer experience is what it's all about lately. From your perspective, how do you see channel innovation, given all the cutting edge technology out there? What are your thoughts on channel innovation?
So it's actually quite interesting. Usually channel in the old my banking days would have been people phoning in or people walking in. And of late with modern technologies like instant messaging on WhatsApp and Instagram and whatever technology you could have, WhatsApp business accounts in particular as well, we're starting to see this trend of a contact center of the future that actually allows for this omni-channel interaction coming from clients and having them engage with enterprises. In the banking industry, there's been some phenomenal growth in that space, especially using things like Amazon Connect to be that single platform that just funnels all of that communication into their platforms.
Because we specialize in, as you say, contact center of the future, we've done this across many industries, whether it's banking or telco. For us, call centers are an entity by itself. We need to think about how are problems perceived within a call center, and that's how we approach it. We're not stuck from who is doing it or what industry is there. So we've got a lot of success stories where we've done that within the banking space, within the telco space, and so on and so forth. And it's actually worked out very well. We've seen and extrapolated some really cool metrics from there where they have seen value from these implementations turning into more revenue or better customer experience or more efficient agents. And that's ultimately what any business owner would want.
100% to that. More efficient agents just leads into better quality control across how you engage with your clients, making sure that those agents don't have to swivel chair amongst all of the different applications that they usually have on the desktop. Coming from a call center background myself, I know how irritating it is to alt-tab between all of those things on a single screen. And modern day, the guys are just on a laptop because with work from home policy, it's kind of difficult. So you can't always have this nice desktop monitor as an agent. So just taking all of that and integrating it into a seamless application. By example, some of the use cases we've had, we integrated into Salesforce, making sure that those agents are able to do calling, contacts, emails, WhatsApp messages, all of that from a single pane of glass. In the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little pop-up that comes up and they can manage everything from there. It's epic.
Thanks. Can you share some examples of how businesses have used BlueSky and AWS's services to transform their operations?
So BlueSky has implemented Amazon Connect for clients using our expertise in AWS. So what we were trying to solve there for was the concept of omnichannel. We wanted customers to be able to engage with the contact center in a more efficient way, and for agents to be able to engage with the customers using those different channels. So what Amazon Connect has allowed us to do for the client is to be able to consolidate that engagement and then also bring it out into a more funneled experience for the agent as well.
For one of the implementations that we've actually done is we've incorporated WhatsApp into Amazon Connect as well. With the platform growing and expanding as the tech becomes more apparent, it's become a need to have your WhatsApp business integrated into the rest of the call center as well. So with AWS Connect providing that functionality for us, we were able to put WhatsApp in there and then take the entire platform and integrate it into Salesforce, so that the agents of the bank can actually service their clients from a single pane of glass instead of having to go and alt tab through the different applications or swivel chair to something else. It just made their efficiency improve phenomenally well.
AWS offers a wide range of data management solutions. In your opinion, how should businesses decide on which service to use based on their specific needs?
So this is actually quite a contentious topic in the principal engineering team. We all like doing our own approaches and using our own kind of tools. But the one thing that we can agree on is, what does the client actually want to do? It honestly depends. When we're talking about data processes and data pipelines and all of those things, to what scale do you actually want to utilize it? Where are you going to build your enterprise data warehouse? Because that's going to define what kind of tool you want to use. Do you just want to move data around? Because that's a different tool once again. Do you want to do transactions on that data while it's in flight, or do you want to do transactions when it's at rest? And then I guess the one thing that we always run into is whether it's application data that we're talking about, which is OLTP, transactional protocol data, or whether it's OLAP, analytical protocol data. Because the analytics tend to go to the bigger tools like Redshift. Then you maybe want to start looking at things like having a glue job so you can run some Spark there and do some transformations on it. If you're just moving data around, let's say you've got a CSV file that you want to shuffle around, something like Lambdas is perfectly fine for that. And if you're not doing operational querying on that data, you can have something like Athena on top of it to read that data out of an S3 bucket without going into too much detail. So it really depends. Usually what we see ends up happening is you have a culmination of all of these things kind of fit together. So you'll have some Lambdas moving CSVs into place for you, so that there's a glue job that can take those CSVs and then push it into something like Redshift. And then Redshift becomes this enterprise data warehouse, or maybe just a BI data mart just for a specific business unit to play around in, or even a custom-built CDP platform that the guys want to use to actually just get that view, that customer 360 view that everybody is always after, making sure you know exactly what's going to be the next best action to take with that client, what is your next cross-sell, upsell in that space, and having all of that data readily available, it just makes it so much nicer. And the one thing is the configuration inside of the AWS space to actually make it happen is so smooth. It just works.
What is Dynamo DB?
Right. Dynamo DB is a very beautiful tool, number one. it is a NoSQL database, right? But what makes it quite unique is that it's a key value pair kind of database. But what AWS has done with Dynamo DB is nothing short of a miracle. That it's such a convenient database, it scales incredibly, number one. Number two, it has a DAX layer, which is like an accelerated caching layer that sits on top of DynamoDB. So even the information that you query can already be readily available for you, right? Number three, you can create something called global tables, where the tables can redundantly exist across the ecosystem. So where data redundancy is important to ensure that information is sitting here and it can also sit somewhere else. You don't have a loss of data. So DynamoDB out of the box comes with all those benefits, and it becomes so convenient to create solutions around that. Also, it's serverless, so it means it scales very well, but also the pricing scales very well as well. So when you're not using it, it doesn't cost you anything.
What is Redshift?
Redshift is the AWS answer to the big MS SQL competitor out in the market. It's a very robust analytical, relational data store that the guys use for analytical purposes. So OLAP, as we said earlier. Effectively, if you want to do any BI reporting or MI reporting of that nature, you're going to put your data inside of Redshift. It allows you to build dimensional models with fact tables, so you get that good old traditional RDMS capabilities inside of it. And from there, you can build your store procedures or your views to transform and change your data and get it ready for that presentation layer. And then any BI tool that you have, whether you're using Power BI, ClickView, Looker, or even MicroStrategy, you've got native connectivity from those platforms into Redshift to ensure that that data that you've produced, you can actually surface out to your end users to use, instead of just having all of these data guys building queries away and giving you CSV files. You just enable this entire process from that tool.
Amazing. What is Athena?
Athena is your SQL querying tool within AWS. So what people or your data analysts generally do is they'll query the data, the relational data that they have, do some SQL statements. What Athena allows you to do is it allows you to do that. But of course, the benefits here are that it integrates very well with some of the ETL processes that exist within AWS. So you can go and create a data set where a schema has been defined, and you can then query that information quite seamlessly with Athena.
Serverless computing is getting a lot of traction these days. How would you say services like AWS Lambda and others are changing the way developers build and deploy applications?
Yeah, serverless is one of those beautiful buzzwords that have been floating around. So serverless by definition is exactly that. No server. The concept of servers just vanishes. So you as a developer or as a someone who's operating in the cloud, you don't need to worry about how something is being managed because AWS is already managing it for you. So how does this make it easier? Well, it means that some of those processes where traditionally I'd be using servers to do those processes, now you can use serverless architectures like you mentioned, Lambda, where you can use Lambdas for short operations or triggering of different processes whilst you are doing, say, a CI/CD pipeline. You can now start triggering these cheap, easy compute instances like a Lambda to start triggering all these beautiful processes, and you can create beautiful automations out of it. So then you as the developer, all you worry about is the code, but not worrying about how things are being managed, particularly the servers.
Exactly that point. Like, I know enough about infrastructure and DevOps to be dangerous, but I'll never be the best DevOps engineer there is. And things like Lambda functions or even Fargate by extension allows me to deploy into that framework much, much faster without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure or what do these specifications need to be, and am I in the right subnet, and is this IP setup correct? I can just take my code, my Python code that I'm writing, deploy it into that Lambdas function, and start playing immediately with that. So your time to market is also much, much faster when you start to develop these things. And especially as you get used to the tools and you understand that they have this ability to scale to zero. So that cost just goes away if you don't use it. Especially when I'm prototyping in my own projects as well, I tend to go serverless, usually the smaller side of it like Lambdas, just to make sure that I can validate that what's going out is actually working the way that I expect without incurring a massive cost behind it.
Yep.
So talking about data, AWS obviously has a very broad range of data, AI, and machine learning services. Walk us through some of the considerations that a business has to go through to be able to integrate these services into their existing workflows whilst getting business outcomes.
So what we do really well is, before anything else, we understand our customer. What data sources do they have? What kind of data do they have a view of? What are the problem statements that they currently have? And a problem statement could also just be, we'd like to drive higher revenue, or we'd just like to know our customers better. It doesn't need to be a fixing of a problem. It could just also be optimization. So we take a look at all of that, and that's where now we start to leverage some of the more powerful components of AWS. So in the context of having that Amazon Connect instance, where we've created that contact center of the future, with an omni-channel environment, now we can start funneling all that data and create an ETL process for that. So we can transcribe the conversation first, it turns into clear text, we then create an ETL process for that to turn that into usable data. Now we turn that data, which was dormant first, into something usable. We create sentiment out of it, we can create some of the scoring can be done off of what's happening on the floor, but also we can have an understanding of what's mentioned most by our customers. So now you've got this pipeline using AWS Glue as an example, which it's a managed service. We can do transformation on the fly. You mentioned earlier Athena. We can then query that data that we've created, but then we can also visualize that data. Once we've turned it into something usable, we can then use QuickSight to see that data. So now we've gone from a conversation between a customer and an agent into a chart that can be extrapolated into value. And that's what we have available to ourselves. So it's not only that we've got those tools, we've got the expertise to utilize that in the best architectural manner that obviously is driving the most amount of value for the customer.
So I'm going to be a bit nerdy. So AWS Comprehend, I know sentiment analysis always sounds kind of, oh yeah, you can get, you know whether I'm angry or upset or whatever it is. You should see it in action. It's actually insane how well those things pick it up. Not just from like voice cues, how you use it, but also the wording that you use. And that feeds a lot into things like actually just doing automated QA on calls. So usually what happens in a call center environment is that when a call is being QA'd, they'll take a percentage of all calls that you've done for the month. So let's say that you do 100 calls each month, they'll take 8 or 10 of those calls. Because there's 200 to 400 agents sitting in that contact center that they need to interact with, and it's impossible to score everything. So if you can use something like AWS Comprehend to actually pre-screen those calls, and you can then put in a kind of a percentile, right? So that if a call falls under a specific percentile, it then gets sent to a human in the loop to actually listen to that call and find out what went wrong. All of the other calls are going well, because the sentiment analysis tool tells you they're going well. And I promise you, everybody's like, no, just sit there once while the engineer configures it and have a look at the outcome. It's mind-blowing.
Now imagine what that does for escalation processes. So now with the intelligent routing that you can create with those tools, now you can escalate even better so that the manager already has context on what's happening, but they then know the tone of the conversation and they can deal with it better. So you empower the agents that are on the floor, that are dealing with this every single day. You empowering them to just create a much better customer experience, ultimately.
And if you start putting in a mature event-driven architecture in that, the moment that call has been scored, you can already preemptively reach out to that client on their preferred communication channel and go, hey, we see that you had an experience with us. I don't want to say bad or risky or anything like that, but you interacted with us. It didn't go well. What could we have done better? Do you want to escalate already? I mean, at the same time, we send an email out to that client. We can escalate to the team leader going, you have a call in your environment that's gone bad. Start being proactive about how you reach out to that client.
So I love speaking to Alexa at home. How do you see Alexa and the role of voice bots in contact centers of the future?
Sure. So Amazon Connect actually has an integration with Amazon Lex, which is a similar tool as Alexa, where there's a transcription of the stuff that's being said but with a voice, right? So what you can inherently do with Amazon Connect is use Lex to then become that voice for you. So obviously in the real world, you want to use that particular tool for some of the more common queries, but you want the client to still have that experience of speaking to someone on the other side. And again, referring to all the IVR stuff that we spoke about earlier, if something needs better attention or an actual agent, it can then be routed to an agent afterwards. And I think that also creates somewhat of a seamless experience. It's like transferring to another agent rather than going from text to voice.
And another side of that is like Lee says now, is it used to be speech to text, then you'll do your processing and then text to voice back out. But I mean, with the advancements, especially with LLMs of late, that conversational aspect has grown a lot. And it's been this explosion over the past couple of years. Where you originally had an interaction on a phone maybe, and you phoned into a call center and you were like, one, yes, one. You're no longer in that space. I think of late technology has grown so much that bots actually become indistinguishable. To the extent that I had a robocaller phone me the other day, and I was unaware that I was speaking to a person until I was 3 or 4 sentences in, because they had the ambient call center noise at the back. The conversational tone of the person was perfect. I mean, even to linguistics for us locally, and having some of those colloquialisms in there is amazing. So having that kind of technology right at the front of the engagement to weed out the everyday tasks, so you actually have the more focus or more priority items that do need that warm touch come in, is exceptional. And I mean, with you playing with your Alexa bots at home, I've got the Google Home stuff as well, ChatGPT with their voice bots at the moment. I think this tech is just going to start growing and growing and growing. I don't think we've seen the end of it yet.
Yeah. Can't agree with you more. Hyper-personalization, the innovation on experiences for customers it's next level. And the cutting edge technologies out there it's a competitive space. And they say scalability is one of the hallmarks of AWS, but in execution of these services, implementing the projects, there's a big question that businesses have to ask themselves: do I go pilot or proof of concept first, or do I run a full-scale program? What have been your experiences on what's most successful?
So I think there's also been a bit of a transformation in that space. I don't think pilot or proof of concept is the fashion as much anymore. I think it's better to start thinking of them as POVs or proof of value. so that even if you want to go there, jumping in on the deep side is never going to work out that well for you in the long term, because there's too much technical debt and other business debt that comes along with that. But if you can have a very focused proof of value implementation to determine whether it's actually going to work for you or not, is most likely the first step. And then for scale, with Lee, he's a much better DevOps engineer than I will ever be. But taking someone like his talents and taking those products, you can just scale them infinitely, because he can just deploy them to wherever they need to go. As we said earlier, serverless is the way to go at the moment, and it's purely because of this. Because you can start at nothing and just scale infinitely if you wanted to. Not so good for your wallet at the end of the day if you go to the infinity side, but a very good way to actually just go from a proof of value into a full scale robust solution.
And I think that's a very important point that you make there, because with the advent of cloud and hyperscalers, it's actually allowed us to invent and iterate very quickly. So you do this proof of value, and it actually is just deployed and shown to the client very quickly. And if they decide this is what we want to do, or they want to add particular features, it's, as Hardus was saying, it's not a big leap to now have to add another 4 or 6 months to amend the original solution. You could quickly turn that into a production-ready product, because all that stuff is now sitting in the cloud. As you were mentioning, serverless. You're not managing servers. You're not needing to have some kind of room that's humming and it's cold, all those air cons in there. You don't need to do that anymore. These things are just sitting. You can open up a laptop right now and have the most powerful instance that defeats all the computers that you've ever seen. You can spin that up right now.
I also think that talking about scalability, the traditional way of scalability is it's what's referred to as vertical scalability, right? So vertical scalability means we put in more CPUs and we put in more RAM and we put in more hard drives. For all traditional on-premise implementations, that means we either had server racks that we needed to spin in and out. And if that happens, it needs to happen over a weekend, and there's downtime and there's other conversations around it. In the cloud, vertical scaling is quite easy. It's not as easy as horizontal scaling, and the horizontal scaling stuff is really lacquer. We actually had a conversation about that in the week with him scaling up an insane amount of lambdas on horizontal scaling. Basically, what the horizontal scaling is you take that instance of your lambdas, if you will, that you had, and you just replicate it. And you continue replicating it until you can actually manage the workload. It's a very efficient way of multitasking, if you will, for a specific workload, and the cloud enables it. It's built for that specific horizontal scaling, with the added benefit of hot swapping your vertical scaling for those deployments.
Incredible. Thank you so much. So now both of you have decades of experience in AWS, and now I have the blessing to work with BlueSky, who has hundreds of engineers. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to enter the AWS market and career?
Start. I think when you're going into something like AWS, there's a lot that gets thrown at you all at the same time. But it becomes daunting until you actually just start, From a user, I would say get your hands dirty, get into it, get lost, turn that into turn your ideas into something that is usable. It's a really good experience. You obviously, keeping best practices in mind, you do become a little bit flexible with the cloud, but just get lost in it. But also from a client perspective, I think buy into it. There's a lot of things that clients want to do or have imagined can be done for their business. Some don't even know how to drive better value into their business. And the reality is we are moving towards this cloud-driven environment. And the moment you start adopting some of those ideologies and ways of thinking, best believe you are going to see those numbers triple. Everything around your business will start to improve. in a way that you just haven't seen before.
So those ideologies and things are a really valid point, and it's the way I would approach it is actually grab something that you want to do, right? You have a Excel file living somewhere that you manually track your spending on, or your home project, or whatever it might be. Take that Excel file and figure out how to get it from your own device into an S3 bucket using a Lambdas. That's going to give you a very good idea of how to interact with that environment, how to figure things out. Get familiar with the kind of technologies that you can deploy into serverless applications. Like, am I going to use Python? Am I going to use .NET Core? Does it need to be Dockerized or containerized in any way that I need to deploy it in there? That's the best way. And then supplement that with certification. Right? Certification is a very good way to get a broad view of how the technology works, but you'll never get the true understanding until you get your hands dirty in that space.
Yep.
So my advice for any starting engineer in the cloud space is find something and do it.
Amazing. And I know BlueSky is growing an AWS business. There's multiple roles available right now. Can you tell us a bit more about what type of AWS individual are you looking for?
Yeah, so obviously at BlueSky, we are customer centric, and some of the verticals that we really care about are these innovative scenes. So data pipelines or data engineering, machine learning and generative AI, and obviously with our solutions being contact center of the future, we want to build solutions around that. So the skills that we're looking for there are your DevOps engineers who are able to be adept in the cloud, your data engineers who can understand how AWS Glue works, or how to build an end-to-end pipeline, infer schemas in there, how to understand the way to store data, how to implement some of the new machine learning tools that come out of the box with AWS. So now we're in a situation where you don't even need to build your own models, So we want people who can understand how these things feed into the ecosystems that we create for clients, because at the end of the day, we want to build a team that is super competent, very well aware, but they're always willing to dare and to see something beyond what they've seen before. And that's the behavior and the culture that we're looking for in our AWS engineers.
I think in my personal opinion, what makes a really good engineer is obsession. Whether it's DevOps engineering, data engineering, software engineering, whatever it is that you're keen for, is that obsession. It's that burning, insatiable itch inside of you to actually figure out how to run this deployment into this infrastructure, and the satisfaction you get when you actually solve that problem. Or it's being a data engineer and sitting down with a C-suite executive and trying to understand what do they need to actually steer the business, and how to extrapolate that out of nothing but data and cells and values, or how to be an excellent software engineer and bring to life something that never existed before. I think it's driven by obsession.
Thank you very much, gents. This has been a very informative session. I've loved it. And thank you to everybody watching. We really appreciate it. See you soon.